Another question. Are these officers residents of Hawaii? Are they born and raised, or are they shipped over from the mainland to do this job?
They have both. What they're doing right now in Hawaii is called the Domestic Cannabis and Eradication Suppression Task Force. Every federal agency, every prosecutor, every police agency in the state of Hawaii has a member that sits on the task force. And I believe there's 110 different agencies that are actually involved with the Domestic Cannabis and Suppression Task Force, and that includes mainland and local.
I have a question. I remember very clearly that when Obama first was, taking over the presidency, the Attorney General, remind me of what his name was. Holder said that they would respect the laws of each state with respect to marijuana. Am I wrong? I mean...
No, he did say that, and I believe the problem is, in this state, is that the law is so ambiguous. See, in California, you're allowed to, they have distribution centers set up.
Yeah, that's a big issue over here.
And over here, they don't. They stand silent. They say, we stand silent on how you acquire.
Yeah.
So you have to go to this magical land of acquirement, and every time you do, you're risking years in jail.
Yeah, that's why, that's one of the things that I look at it, is just in the law itself is, there's no vehicle to do it. It's legal for medical patients to have marijuana, yet the state has not provided any legal means for them to obtain it, which means normally law-abiding citizens who have this medical condition that they've been, diagnosed with and recommended marijuana as a treatment for whatever medical condition they have to illegally obtain seeds or the dried process or whatever, because even to grow their own plants, they still have to get seeds for those plants, and to me that is a huge gap, which leads wide open for the doors, because it is still illegal on the federal level, regardless of if the state deems it legal medically.
Right, and you make a good point. And in fact, this goes back to the oldest argument on the North American continent, which is that between the Federalists. And what is the state's laws versus federal law? The fact of the matter is that, like it or not, it's illegal. It's illegal. I don't like it any more than you do, but to have flagrant lawbreakers, and I'm sorry, but what you're doing is flagrantly breaking the law. In fact, you seem rather proud of it, and I don't begrudge you that. I actually believe it should be legalized. But the trouble is that you then put the DEA and the token the federal government on the spot, because they have a law, and if it's to have any teeth whatsoever, they need to make criminals out of those who break it. And so, I mean, looking at it from their perspective, it's not completely understandable that they would come after you like that. They're not going after small growers. They're not going after, I don't believe they are going after very small growers. They're certainly not going after users and small amounts of possession. But they are going after larger growers. And I think they do that in part to justify themselves, which is not really a very good reason, I don't think. But it's what they've got, and it's what they do, and it's what we pay them for. And it's a bit too disingenuous to say that because the law is lax in Hawaii, therefore that's the only law we should follow. We don't only follow Hawaii laws, we follow federal laws. And because we live in the United States of America.
Why do they not have the same issue in California?
I agree. I think that it's that's and I agree. I think it's unfortunate that each state seems to be interpreted in each state slightly differently.
Well, part of that is the problem with the federal law. The federal law makes marijuana a Schedule I drug. Under Schedule I drug, there is no recognized medical use in the United States for Schedule I drug. Yet we have 14 states that have medical marijuana laws, and we have the District of Columbia. I believe there's 13 more states that want to pass these laws, and thousands of doctors prescribing this. Before marijuana was illegal, it was used by all of big pharmacy companies in medicines. The medical history of marijuana as medicine goes back thousands of years. So there's a real problem with the law that we're being prosecuted under, and that is that the law says there's no recognized medical marijuana use in the United States, but that's not true. So how do they justify using a law that can't even meet its own definition?
Well, I mean, by going on from your argument, heroin used to be not only prescribed by doctors, sold freely and openly, and considered a great benefit to health. I mean, it's not, there have been various narcotics throughout history have had either religious or medical or simply recreational uses and have not been illegal.
But it's the definition what he's talking about. Is there are states already, and there's doctors in states that have put forth a valid medical use for marijuana.
And I don't think
so the federal law states there is none, but yet individual states say there is.
What are laws for, though? What are laws for? They're for the benefit of everybody. What is this war on drugs? What data is there? What results are there that show that this war on drugs is working?
Well, it's not working.
It's not working
it's
at
not
all.
Working.
At all.
I mean, it's really interesting. I'll just play the radical sociologist here, and I'm going to say
a stretch.
A stretch. It's a stretch. But I would say the war on drugs is a war on the poor, because the people in every social class use drugs, all different kinds of drugs. But who ends up being prosecuted, who ends up in prison? It's the people who are in the blue-collar and poorer classes in the United States, and people of color.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
It's a class warfare. The very, very wealthy people very rarely, if ever, go to prison for marijuana. And people here in Hawaii County have gone to prison for 20 years. David Finley, 63-year-old family man out of Volcano, 20 years in prison for marijuana. Sequoia Hewer, 23-year-old college student, 10 years in prison for marijuana. And no victims were ever produced in any of those marijuana cases. The state has never produced in any of the marijuana cases injured party.
Actually, on that topic, I would like to bring up something that I witnessed recently, and I'd like to bring up what's happening to the children in our community who are hearing these helicopters fly just barely over the roofs of their houses. I recently was over at Mike's house, actually, when the helicopters landed, and I saw a teenage girl start crying because she was so terrified of the helicopters, and other children just run to their parents in fear. And I just want to hear, what you folks have to say on this, because I think that's a huge problem, and that's very concerning to me.
It's incredibly invasive, as you found out to your cost, and I'm sure it's absolutely terrifying whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old. But I think if I'm going to bring a bright point into the discussion, I think de Tocqueville or somebody else, someone once said that there is nothing stronger than an idea whose time has come. And I think, in all honesty, I think this is probably the last generation that's going to have to deal with this. Yeah. I can't imagine that marijuana is the growing distribution, smoking of marijuana, or maybe some other drugs, will actually be illegal in very many years' time.
That's a really good point, because I know one thing, I went to one of the county council meetings when they were talking about legalizing, decriminalizing marijuana, and one of the main things that opponents of legalization, so people who are afraid of marijuana still, are bringing up is, well, it's the federal law, and just really afraid of that. Well, I mean, you only need to know a little bit of history to realize that you can't be afraid of that. Like, laws get changed when there's pressure for things to change. It's not going to change. We're not going to wake up and some Supreme Court justice is going to be like, that's it, marijuana, it's legal. Oh, okay, finally we can do this. This is how history goes, is that people start from the grassroots. You apply pressure, it gets attention, things change. So, when people take the stance of, oh, it's federal law, therefore end of story. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just not in with reality.
And it's a classic example of it's so much easier to impose a law than it is to repeal it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's been true throughout all of history.
There's a problem with economic incentive for the police. The police get grants for these raids, and they're berm grants and they're performance-based grants. More arrests they make.
Seriously?
Yes, the more convictions, they get money. Not only do they get money for that, they're allowed to seize your property, trucks, money, houses, anything they want, basically. And you don't even get to go to trial for that. And they say that it's not double jeopardy. You're not being punished twice for the same crime, in that they sue your house or they sue your truck. So you are arrested for the marijuana crime and prosecuted criminally, and your house is sued for the same crime, but it's your house and you lose your house and you lose your car. And they do it administratively a lot of times, where it's just paperwork. You don't even ever get to the courtroom to see that happen.
I'd like